Hi, I'm Gabriela Houston. I'm the author of The Second Bell, a Slavic folklore-inspired fantasy out with Angry Robot, and of the upcoming The Wind Child, children's novel coming out from Euclid in February 2022.
And I'm Caroline Hardaker, a poet and novelist, so the author of two poetry collections called Bone Evasion and Little Quakes Every Day, and most recently my debut novel Composite Creatures, which came out in April of this year, and it's a dystopian, literary, very dark and twisty tale, and we together are Bookish Take.
So this is where we talk about our experiences in publishing, from the initial idea to the publishing date and beyond. So in this episode, we're very excited to have with us Caroline Lambe. So hi, Caroline. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and about what you do at Angry Robot?
Yeah, sure. Hi, thanks for having me on. I am a freelance publicist and I'm working with Angry Robot Books. So I had the delight of working on both your titles earlier this year. Essentially what I do is I work on the lead title. So one book every month, publicising it as far and wide as I can to bring our great books and authors to as many people as we can in the hope that they buy them. I'm from Ireland, which you can tell. I left Ireland about 9 years ago nearly. And I've been living in England pretty much since. Bit of a stint in Italy in the middle. And I live in Leamington Spa with essentially our zoo, chickens, dog, children, husband.
The 3-year-old chickens.
Yeah, they interrupt a lot of Angry Robot meetings, so I'm surprised you haven't seen them. And as of today,
chickens do.
Yeah, they do, because the kids let them out and don't tell me. And if the back door is open, all you hear is on the kitchen floor as they come in and start like pecking up whatever crumbs are there.
Oh, well, I sort of hope that will be introduced to a chicken at some point.
It's a free cleanup service. I wouldn't complain.
You would think so, except the problem is they pick up what's there, but then they have no qualms whatsoever about pooing on my floor.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, that would be why I pick them up and put them out as soon as I can. Yeah, so our next door neighbour's kid actually did refer to our house as a bit of a zoo one day. I was like, do you know what, you're right. Yeah, it's a little bit of rural Ireland being brought.
Well, everybody loves
that. Sounds great.
Well, I want to give our kids as kind of hands-on childhood as we can when we live in suburbia. So
that's a brilliant idea. Like chickens are a good way to do that.
Fresh eggs every day. Gotta love it.
But in terms of like being a publicist, so what does that, on a day-to-day basis, kind of what does that involve? Like what do you do with your lead books, and how do you help to promote them?
It's a lot of Excel sheets. You have to like Excel. Essentially the way it starts is about 6 months out from publication, really. You're meeting with the author, having a good chat with them about their book, kind of the angles and the lines and the pitches of what you want to do with it, where you see it being kind of pitched to, and the people you want to get it in front of. And there is a timeline to publicizing books. You know, you go with the long leads first. So your bigger places, magazines that maybe, if they're physical, that will have longer print times. So you need to be thinking about a book at least 6 months out. And then you work your way down the line of places that have shorter leads, and then social media sites, physical or online launches, as it has been. So it starts out a long time out, and then you work your way down through it. So in any given day, you know, like I'm just thinking next Monday we're meeting an author whose book is out in March, but I'll also be working on kind of like August and September books that have just come out, because you never want to just forget about them after they've just been published, but also prepping for October's lead, and then setting up November and December. But also this time of year, it's looking to send out summaries of our best of 2021 to anywhere that will be doing those roundups. And here's our key highlights from 2022, because you want to be in those lists. So on any given day, you're dealing with quite a lot.
Yeah, it's like you're a bit of a time traveller, having to travel backwards and forwards in time almost.
It feels like that. When I came back to Angry Robot last year, because it's my second stint here, it was all of a sudden I've gone from just, you know, stay-at-home mother, dealing with day-to-day, week-to-week, and I was talking about 2021 in September, but it was like, and actually Gabriela's book was the first one that I really worked on. You know, you're all of a sudden dealing with halfway through the following year. And even in Angry Robot, you know, we're talking about 2023 for the last few months. So it's, it makes time go too fast too. I think time moves faster when you're actually planning the next 2 years ahead. But it's a lot of Excels. You know, you got to have your sheets to know who you've contacted, who's sent a book, who's requested a book, who you're chasing up. It's probably the hardest part. And I think you have to like people. It's kind of, I went down the traditional route of thinking I wanted to be an editor, because it's what publishing is, isn't it? Everybody always knows the editors. I did an MA in publishing and literature in NUI Galway, and got an internship in publicity, and had taken the advice very literal of just get in any way you can and you can move sideways. So I went to do the internship that summer, and realised very, very quickly that editorial was never going to be for me, even though I had loved it all year, the MA. I just remember thinking, they're so quiet. They sat in the corner on their computer. They rarely spoke, and they were lovely people, but they rarely spoke. Whereas I was given, it's not quite publicity either now, but one of my very first jobs was given a list of the cycling shops in Ireland, and because they had a book called Lakeshore Loops, which I will never forget the name of, and essentially I had to ring every cycling shop in Ireland to see would they stock Lakeshore Loops, and I was green. I was wet behind the ears. I had no idea what I was doing. Had no idea how to sell a book, how to do anything, and that was one of the very first things I ever did. So yeah, but I genuinely, it made me realize I love talking to people. Do you know, I love picking up the phone, actually figuring out how to do it, and it's relationship building. A lot of it is in publicity. You have to know the contacts where, you know, editors in magazines, who likes what exact thing, who's looking for what, and who you can kind of say, hey, I have something that I think you're going to really like. And I really like that. Publicists get a big hit online, especially, you know, you've probably seen those tweets where they say, oh, I hate when somebody says, I hope you're well. I always feel, I'm like, oh, I actually mean it. I'm very down to have the conversation.
That's, you know, it's amazing that this early on kind of thing, you had this self-awareness to realize that this is actually what I like. This is the bit that I enjoy. Well, so I was
very lucky. Yeah, I've only ever worked in independent publishers, and I think the great thing about that is you're sitting in one room and you're listening to everything. You know, you see all the aspects of it. And actually, and considering Ireland is so small publishing wise, and I'm still just thinking every way, because we've just hired a freelance designer in Watkins, the parent group of Angry Robot, and Alice is from Cork, and I thought, well, you know, we don't know each other at all. But no, she used to work for my former housemate, who we went to uni together to do the publishing degree. So publishing in Ireland is that small. But it's really hard then to get in. But essentially the internship, if you have the privilege enough to be able to do it, it's essentially a 6-week interview. And a position came up only a few weeks later, so I managed to get in straight away. So I was very lucky. But you're sitting there and you're getting to know every aspect of how a publishing house works. So yeah, I think in that sense, I was lucky that it was an independent, that it was small, that they gave me, you know, they let me copy edit, they let me do different sides of it when I was there. But because I was exposed to it all, I was very quickly able to be like, no, this is the bit I like. And then I happened to be their publicist who left. So worked out well.
Perfect.
It's just meant to be. Yeah.
Well, you know, we were going to ask kind of how you got into it, but I guess you covered that. You got into that. So on a slightly different note, I guess, like when you're being a publicist for a book, what do you expect from the author that you're working with? And do you think expectations of authors have changed over time compared to when you started and now, or do people expect more or less, or what do you think?
Big question. Expectations on authors, to be honest, I would never have a firm set of expectations. I think I'd be very aware that, you know, most times, and both of you are true in this case, that have full-time jobs or children or other outside things. So you're very aware that anything and everything an author can do for a book is going to be, you know, outside working hours essentially, or added on to their already packed lives. And then you've got personal differences. So, you know, we have authors where in that 6 month out conversation, you find out that they hate guest posts. So it's not something that you can get a list of ideas and pitch them to certain outlets, especially within science fiction and fantasy, where you can get different, you know, different ideas. You both wrote brilliant pieces for a range of different, you know, outlets, Den of Geek and Literary Hub. And, you know, there's so many outlets that you can work with. But some authors will say, no, I can think of nothing worse than writing a guest post. So, you know, some want only interviews. You know, everybody has personal tastes and preferences for what they want to do or what their time will allow. So expectation wise, in one sense, honesty and being really upfront. I love that. So in that meeting, if somebody's to say to me, here's what I don't want to do and here's what I would love to do, I love that, because then I can actually funnel my work into what they're going to like and what they're going to want to see. You know, I have gotten big places and then the author says, oh no, actually I don't want to write that, and it breaks my publicist's heart and soul to turn down something that could be big because the author actually doesn't want to do it. But
and it's also your name on the line in a way, because you set something up, you have this relationship, and then you feel like you're letting down.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh yeah. As I said, it is all relationship building. I have had a couple of awkward ones where you go, oh, that didn't work out, and that's not even something recently. It's, you know, I'm in publishing with the stay-at-home mother gap a good few years, but I think working with me is probably the only expectation I really have, because being an independent.
It sounds like a partnership.
Oh, absolutely, it is, because like somebody like, I mean, Gabriela, you are a powerhouse of research and places you wanted your book to go to, and I would have no problem with that whatsoever. In one way, it gave me so much more work. Because you had all these people I had to contact. But the flip side was you had done a huge amount of legwork, and then I could go and contact everybody on top of what I was already doing. So it was really like working together really well, where we could then follow up. And it was the same with you, Karen. So you come from your poetry background, we had literary angles we wanted to contact, and you already had that. You already had a really nice idea of where you wanted your book to go. And that, I think if you can get a good flow going between you and you trust each other, I'm hoping you both trusted me. It means you can work even harder and you can work together. But, you know, if you get a rogue author who goes off and contacts BBC or, you know, major newspapers or different magazines, and they don't even CC you in, and you don't know, and you've maybe offered somebody else an exclusive, or it can get really messy. So I think working together and trusting that, you know, we love your book, that we were part of the team that wanted to buy it, and that we wanted to do really well. I mean, basically our jobs depend on it doing well. So as much as it's a job of love, my mortgage provider would also like if your book did well. So they're my kind of main expectations. I mean, what were your expectations coming in? What did you know about publicity?
Well, I suppose for me, my day job is in marketing and more content marketing, but a lot of it is the similar stuff. And I have worked in publicity before a little bit, a lot of sort of digital outreach stuff. So I suppose I was familiar with it, but I wasn't as familiar with kind of how it works in terms of books, because it wasn't books. It was completely different. It was like fair trade stuff. So I kind of had an idea of how it works and the relationship building and stuff, but I had no idea the likelihood of getting into things, the probability of it, the different sorts of places that you tried. So it was a bit of a mix for me. Still definitely a learning experience, but it was great. It was great.
It's interesting, you know, because again, I've had like publishing experience before, and I was just so incredibly pleasantly surprised by you, because basically the bottom line is I expected nothing, because where I work, like I've seen situations where like the big name authors who already had, like, you already knew they were going to sell like, you know, 500 1,000 books or something. So they got all the marketing budgets, they got all the like bells and whistles, and then the new writers or like people who are a bit more niche just got nothing, like absolutely nothing. So, you know, when speaking of legwork, I walked in kind of expecting nothing, but just wanting to kind of do as much as I can and sort of make it as easy as possible to help publicize my book, because I didn't know how the marketing budgets were, you know, split. I didn't know how much time you realistically had to kind of spend on me. So I didn't want to set myself up expecting that anything was going to go in a particular way. So kind of that leads me to the next question, because, you know, in your experience, so realistically, how much of an influence do you think that an author personally has over their sales figures? Because there's been a lot of discussion online recently that I've seen on social media or on YouTube, sort of book channels, where some authors have expressed this feeling of being gaslit almost, but especially by the bigger publishers, into thinking that their social media presence, for example, can replace a marketing budget, essentially. So what's your position on that?
I mean, one way it ties into the second half of Caroline's question, which I didn't kind of come back into, which the expectations of authors. I think that the culture is also different now, especially than when I started in 2008. Social media is so important on every angle of it now. Like, the expectations of authors, I think, have majorly changed because of social media, because I think outwardly it looks really easy that if you get your book on TikTok, it's going to sell. Or if you get your book to like a bookstagram over 300,000, it's going to sell. I mean, it's not that simple. I think the amount of authors and books there are now, even trying to get their attention. I don't know if you saw on Twitter, like Margaret Kingsbury, who writes for BuzzFeed, who does the SFF roundups. And we got a book into this autumn's roundup, but she mentioned on Twitter they had 120 books for that season alone sent to her. That's 120 sci-fi and fantasy books that she was sent for consideration. I mean, and that's probably not even at every publisher, and it's one outlet. So it's massive what you're trying to get in to all these different social media outlets and that. And I think where it frames then the importance that's been put on it for authors is really tricky, because, you know, I've seen it as well, and I've heard of publishers who will only accept authors with, and I don't know whether that's true, you know, it's all these industry rumors where they go, you need this amount of followers across different platforms. I mean, it wouldn't be something I like or agree with. And I think as an angry robot, or maybe it's my independent background too, first of all, we're never going to have money, either in any job that I've worked in, to buy these authors that are going to sell 500,000 copies. You know, that's a big 5, a big 4 kind of in buy-in anyway. But I think, completely lost my train of thought. You will edit this out.
I was just thinking, like, basically about the attitude that it can replace the marketing budget, and just basically writers feeling like they're being told that it's all on them, whereas they feel that their influence is actually minuscule in terms of what they can achieve personally.
I don't think it's minuscule. It's not the be all and end all, though. And I think somewhere like Angry Robot wouldn't do the open door submissions if it was, because essentially they're debuts that don't have agents. You know, they don't have a background. They don't have a platform already that they're standing upon at which to. So you don't need it. It does help. Like, absolutely, when we get an acquisitions document in, I will look at the author. I will check them out across social media. But I would say it's more of a plus on their behalf than a minus if they don't have it. Like, it's a bonus. And I think you get some authors who naturally are very good at building up rapport and building up a community of their own. Like, I mean, somebody who's taken it to the nth degree is Chuck Wendig or John Scalzi or Mary Robinette Kowal. You know, they've created absolute communities of which people are part of, and then that in itself is marketing for their books. But I mean, in my opinion, it shouldn't be expected of authors to do anything that's not them anyway. And I think ordinary book buying public see through that. Like if you follow an author and it's not their natural place to whatever way they're communicating, I think you can see through that they're creating this facade to sell books.
Yeah, and you always see the accounts as well where you follow some people and they just tweet about the things that they like, and it's a bit about their books too, but it's them. Whereas there's other people who tweet, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, and you don't want to follow that, because then it is just a marketing tool for them. It's not, you're not getting anything from it. So
not a very effective marketing tool, is it? Like if it's
no, but I don't think they
no, I think you have to be quite self-aware. And even, I mean, Angry Robot has just started a TikTok account and we're trying to get out, but we've made it like an aim that it won't just be our books, because who wants to follow that? Like that's essentially like looking at a publisher's website. So we've already put up videos mentioning other publishers' books that we all love, because you read other publishers' books, you're allowed to say it. But yeah, it's just about being, I think, really transparent and being natural to yourself. But I mean, I hate the thought that public authors think if they don't have a following or they're not. I mean, the Offset or September lead title, one part of them isn't even on any social media.
Oh,
you know, and she's just got a second book deal, one with Bloomsbury now. So I mean,
I saw that.
Yeah, you don't need it. You know,
I think it's more, you know, I think the angle is more about like I have heard before some writers saying that they were indirectly or straight out directly blamed by their publisher for their sales figures when they had no marketing done on the publisher's behalf. So when they so I've heard this before with writers who kind of not as popular perhaps, or like kind of firmly mid-list, saying that, you know, they had barely a retweet from the publisher for the book, but then when the sales figures came in, they said, like, you know, they were told that they didn't do enough somehow.
I mean, no, I mean, I wouldn't agree with that at all. I mean, there's any amount of reasons why a book doesn't sell. And it's probably even in itself one of the hardest publicity things is you can have a book that hits all your targets and doesn't sell. Or you can have a book that you get all the right pitches for, and whatever reason it doesn't work, they don't get accepted. It's kind of the same. Like there's, at the end of the day, it all depends on whether or not it gets the attention of people and they buy it. It's certainly, in my opinion, definitely not going to be because they haven't tweeted about it or have a big enough following online.
In that sense, it sounds really like when you submit to an agent, to be honest, because it's a mix of the book has to be good, it has to catch someone's eye, it has to be at the right time and the right place to a degree. The right time of year even can make a difference. Like there's so many different factors. Do you wish all writers knew before their books come out? Is there anything you'd like them to know?
Kind of touched on it, I think, in a way already. Probably similar to what I said before, which was that sometimes it just doesn't happen. It's just bad to start with a negative. You know, that all the work can be there, everything can be lined up, and maybe it just doesn't translate to sales. But that doesn't, I suppose, from an inside perspective, then that doesn't mean we haven't worked really hard. Sometimes the most hours can go on the books that aren't getting picked up, because you don't just have a list and check through it, and if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's not like that at all. It's for every no you get, you come up with another 2 to 3 areas of places you can go to. So if your book doesn't get publicized in the way you'd hoped or dreamed, it's not because maybe they haven't tried. And I'm speaking from a personal point of view. Different publishing houses, bigger ones, maybe it is like that. But you know, from ours, it's there's probably more hours gone into it if it hasn't worked than actually if it was. And that it's never, in a way, especially if you're with an independent publisher, it's never that we're actively not trying to get your book somewhere. You know, shops are really conservative at the minute, like, you know, bricks and mortar shops, and trying to get in can be harder. I suppose if you go with an independent, you take the one-on-one love that you get and interaction and relationship building and the hard work that gets put in on the ground for you, and that you'll be completely involved in. The flip side of it is, you know, the downside maybe is a little bit like, well, actually it might be harder for us in some areas. to get your books out there physically. Certainly not the case digitally or anything else. And we have a really strong US links as well to bookshops. So it's just more, if it doesn't work, it's never on purpose, because that would make us all very bad at our jobs.
Yeah.
And I suppose the other side of it is that you can never be too proactive yourself. You know, whether or not that's like we talked about, you know, doing your own research or your own ideas or anything. And there's never an idea too crazy. I'm all for long shots. I love a long shot idea. Some of them pay off, some of them don't. You never know what works. But yeah, I think one of the questions I kind of tend to ask is, you know, in that 6-month out meeting is, if in a dream world, what's the big box that you could tick to say I'm an author? And kind of that, if you can aim for that and get everything else underneath it, you're flying. But it's if you could know that it's okay to aim high. If it doesn't happen, it's not a reflection on you or the book. It could be the timing. It could be just something doesn't click.
Do you find yourself in this vein? Do you find yourself managing the writer's expectations a lot, especially sort of in your freelance career? Have you had situations where you felt the publisher or perhaps the previous publisher had overpromised and created unrealistic expectations?
Well, only freelance in the last year. Before that, I was always in-house. It just suits life better right now. Not really, I think, because it's being freelance in particular and being an angry robot, I'm involved from the very beginning. So if a publisher overpromised publicity, that's me. Like that's literally me. I'm the one who's done that to myself. So it's really important I don't do that. I always make it clear, I'm like, we can aim big. Like, let me talk to the New Yorker. Let me try for something crazy and big. But, you know, then we put a realistic hat on and we, you know, see where it falls. I know you do get authors that come in, and I mean, you get authors that come in and think they're going to walk onto the Jonathan Ross show or something. In Ireland, it's the Late Late Show. You know, that was the big goal, and I managed it in my life in Ireland, I think, about 3 times to get authors on the Late Late Show, and I would have a glass of wine in the green room and just literally pinch myself. Like,
so, you know, you hope for the best, but keep expectations sort of.
And I think that's it. You have to be a little bit aware of what everybody expects and what everybody hopes for and what everybody can aim for, and then see where you fall as you put the work in and see where it comes out. But no, certainly not like over promising. Some authors come in with different expectations, and you do have to, I think, in a certain way, having a really good agent there is vital. You see the authors that come in that maybe have been encouraged to think it's, you know, possible to walk onto the Jonathan Ross show, or, you know, get an interview on This Morning or something like that. And you could have an agent behind it telling them, yes, this is possible. I mean, it's always possible. Whether it's probable or not is very different. So a really good agent will already have laid down the kind of the ideas of what they'll be aiming for and what they would expect to. And it's why we tend to involve the agents in all our calls, publicity, marketing. Like, it's really good if they know what we're planning.
Because especially if you come from outside the publishing industry, you might be going into it completely green and just innocently think, well, I've seen offers on this show, so, and I'm an author, so could I get on the show? So
completely. And I have no problem with people making the jump. It's if you get it in the neck that they're not, that's different. Luckily, that doesn't happen very often.
Oh God, thank goodness. Well, in that sense, like, what for you as a publicist, what makes the perfect author brand as an author, if you can envisage it?
I think it's a mixture of things. It's knowing their book inside out and knowing its audience, like who's really going to want to read it. I think it's natural to think everybody should read my book. And I would love if everybody read our books, but you know, you're not going to get a fantasy book about motherhood isn't really going to appeal maybe to somebody who's a hard sci-fi reader. You know, you have to kind of know where your audience is, and if an author comes with a strong identity of their book and where they want it to go, that really helps from my point of view. Also on on themselves and what they want to do, what they're comfortable doing. If they're willing to get up and in front of conventions and panels and things that we can put them forward to, that they want to actively be a part of the community, that's really good. I think, just who knows their audience, who knows their reach, who's enthusiastic, who, you know, has no problem with doing a bit of legwork too if they want to really be actively involved. I don't know. You're going to reassess whether or not I expect too little of authors now. I can just apologise to 2022 authors there. Now I will raise the bar.
In that vein, what are like the big no-nos for you? Like,
going off solo runs. I mean, I play Gaelic football. The only solos should be on the field. Like, absolutely. Solo runs and publicity are just bad, where you don't CC me or even advance notice of, hey, I want to get in touch with this person or that person. And, you know, that can just get really messy because it's all relationship building. And I've mentioned before, you could be doing exclusives and, you know, maybe other publicists would work differently, but I wouldn't get down to the nitty gritty with people of, you know, I'm giving this person an exclusive, because that's just day-to-day work. There's a certain element of author care and management there too, because I would never tell an author how many places maybe declined a pitch before it was accepted. So you're not going to update them on every single thing, because, you know, yes,
there's too much.
There's too much, and yes, they might really like to know, but the flip side is, if you saw 6 no's in a row from an outlet for your book, that's going to be really personally hard to take. Whereas I think, you see the way I internalized the curse, I nearly said it, I didn't. But then, you know, then I'll go to the next place. You know, so I'm, you know, that bit removed. It's not my baby. I haven't written it. I wanted to do really well. So I'm not going to involve an author on every single level, which means they don't know the places or the plans or what I have coming down the line. So if they go off and start tweeting XYZ or contacting directly to different producers or editors, that's messy.
The whole thing. Also, that doesn't look very professional if the same person gets an email from you and maybe they've already said no, and then the offer bothers them.
Yeah, and it would insinuate as well that the author and the publicist aren't great at communicating to each other either.
Or the author doesn't trust the publicist or the publisher. They don't believe you're doing the work, or it happens at bookshops too, which, I mean, bookshops love to hear from authors. No problem with that whatsoever. If an author wants to go to a bookshop or drop bookmarks in or book plates and that, but you know, you could get it with a launch where the authors are contacting them directly about things, and then we don't know, and we're doing it separately, and you always want it to look like you're singing from the one hymn sheet, really. Anyway, you want the book to do well. So if an author is kind of going off on their own, that's true. It just makes things tricky.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Caroline. It's been brilliant, and I'm sure that people are going to find this very useful. Also, in terms of a kind of mental prep for what the reality of this side of kind of publishing is when they actually get their book out there, because I think it's very tempting to think of as like your publication date as this kind of goal. It's like, once you're there, and then everything kind of happens beyond you. But having this kind of introduction, I think it's helpful to kind of set the expectations and set the sort of understanding of the process.
It's as much of a journey as the editorial side is. I suppose that has a very definitive end goal, in that you hold a finished copy. But publicity in one way is never really done. There's always somewhere you could get your book out to. I mean,
that's what you want to hear. As an author, that's what you want to hear. You don't want to think that, you know, everyone's going to forget about your book 2 days after a publication date.
Like, some of the best books can be still on your backlist. So it's never just all frontlist. Frontlist naturally gets more attention because it's what's shiny and new. But backlist can have some of the most special books there too. So you got to work past it, and you know, you might have a launch party or have a hybrid event, or however we're going to keep moving forward in this COVID kind of getting post-COVID world, and how we're going to keep promoting events and author involvement. But there's no end date, and even books that are a year or two old, if an author was to get in touch with me or somebody in the company and say they have an idea, absolutely brilliant. Or as I said, we're always on the lookout for where we can talk about our books. Who works in publishing that doesn't want to talk about books? It's like people who hate the London Book Fair. I will never understand those people. The first time I went and was like, this is a giant room full of people who love books, who want to talk about books.
It does sound exciting.
I've loved it from day one. It is exhausting, but I have loved it. To be fair, I got dumped into it. It was the year of the Icelandic volcano, and the ash stopped all the flights. But I was stuck here because my then boyfriend, now husband, was already here, and I come over to visit him. My flight got stuck here. My bosses in Ireland couldn't get over for it, and I had never been to London. And they said, "Will you go to the fair?"
Oh God!
Deep end. That's amazing.
Baptism of fires is the way I do publishing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to figure out the tube. Had to figure out everything. I had no idea what I was doing.
For the impatient, that's the best way.
Yeah. Straight in. No, nothing is ever as hard as the first time. Then everything just gets easier.
Thank you so much for this.
Oh, it's been great. Thank you very
Caroline.
much for having me on.
Thank you. It's been dead interesting. Thank you.